Standing by the radio, I feel so out of place. There's a certain type of rhythm that the treble can't erase. I know you can tell just by looking at my face. Oh, what about my weakness? I'm totally addicted to bass. Wow, wow. Totally addicted to bass. Wow, wow. Your bass line is shooting up my spine. Your bass line. Your bass line, it's got me feeling fine. It's filling up my mind. Welcome to the Sabby and Jaybe show. Of course, I am one of your hosts, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here this day. Just don't go away. Hang on. Sabby will be here in a second. Mama's coming through. She's just running a little behind. All right. All right. I know some of y'all about to click away. God, this is Jaybe. It's just Jaybe. Who is this guy? Anyway, the Sabby and Jaybe show is every single Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys would like to, you guys can tune in to us there as well. So good to see all of you here today. Also, if you have not already, go ahead and give a like to the video so that it helps us out. Thank you so very much for tuning in as well. If you guys have not already, you guys can join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live or upload clips or write any articles or anything like that. All right. So also, if you guys would like to, you also can email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. This also is a way to get our attention when it comes to news stories, or if you have any type of words of encouragement you like to give, or anything like in regards to mutual aid, joining us for mutual aid, you guys can reach us through there as well. So thank you so very much for that. So while we're waiting for my co-host to arrive in a few minutes, I just want to say hello to everybody, and also going to say hello to some people in the chat and give some shout outs as well. So while we're at it, let's get to that really quick. So shout out to Summit Sterling for becoming a channel member. Clap it up for Summit Sterling. Thank you so very much for helping support the channel. This means a lot to us very much. Thank you so very much. Richard Musser has also become a member. So thank you so very much for becoming a member as well. Clap it up for Richard. We love our Richards, all right? So thank you very much for tuning in. We have Wadi Pilgrim coming in. Oh my goodness, look at this lady coming in here. She's a lady. Whoa, whoa, she's a lady.
What's up, Jaybe?
Good to see you, Sabs. I told everybody, don't click away because they just saw me. I was like, Sab's coming. Mama's coming. She's coming.
What's going on? Yeah, today's been crazy. It's been a busy day. Good Lord.
Yeah. It's just good to see you. How you doing?
Good, man. All this breaking news is driving me crazy.
Yo, oh my goodness. But you know what? That's what we're here for. We're here to disseminate that news and let people know what's going on. Ready to get into it? All right. We also have Ellen says live Twitter says stream not available. Live Twitter.
Doing that. It's the Twitter broadcast. Sometimes Twitter does that where like the stream doesn't show up on. I don't know why it does that.
Elon. CBC voter says happy Thursday at Jaybe and Sabby Sabs. We got Bender says that's a clean looking fade, Jaybe. Yeah, right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You know what's funny? I didn't want to do my hair like this until my nephew was like, "Unc, I think you'll look good with this." I'm like, "Really?" He's like,
"Go for it, JP. Go for it."
Because my nephew, he has the confidence and the style. Shout out to you, nephew. You know who I'm talking about. I love you. And so I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'll do it. And everybody was like, "You look good." I'm like, For real?
You got to tape up in a fade.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty happy about that. So I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Yes, Janice says you look like you're losing weight. I'm trying. Yes, I'm trying to get my cheekbones more pronounced because I am trying to get the African features more pronounced in me. You see.
Me and Jaybe been in the gym.
Well, that's why I'm tired as hell right now because I was in the gym earlier. I didn't even get the chance to take a nap, Sabs.
Naps? What are those?
Something that only old people and kids can get. Lord, I tell you. Thank you so much, Janice. All right, we have Car Honda says looking good, Jaybe. Man, everybody's talking about me, man. My head's gonna get big in here. By the way, I did those leg presses today. Oof.
Mm-hmm.
And you're over 400 pounds in leg press, right?
Yeah, I'm going up again tomorrow. We go up every week.
Yeah. So the leg press I use is different, where the chair slides back and forth, and so I'm not sure if weight is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have that one too. I don't use that one because it's heavy. The only thing about that one is as you go up in weight, it's hard on your knees because you're pushing your body up instead of pushing your legs up. You're pushing your body up. So I think it's fine. Like if you don't have problems with your knees, like that would be fine. But I did notice, like, as I was going up on the weight with that one was harder. But then I switched to the one that the one you see me using now, and that one's cool because you can add on the weighted plates. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not hard on your knees.
Okay. Well, I don't have a choice because that's the only one we have at the gym I go to. So, I'm kind of limited, but I go, like, how you put the pin in the weights. I'm all the way at the bottom. I'm at max. So
yeah, because you can only go so high on that one, unfortunately. And a lot of gyms don't have the one that I use.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So the only thing I think I can do is, if I want to do more weight, is I would have to put the weight down a little bit, but then I would just use one leg instead.
Yeah. That's another way you can do it, guys. I don't know if everybody, goes to the gym or whatever, but one thing you can do is use one leg. Mm-hmm. And it's challenging. Like when you remove that other leg, it's like, whoa. It's like,
Paul says, I see Jaybe and Sabs. I click. Yes, click.
Hey.
Clickety click. All right. We have Andre says, good to see you both. Good to see you, Andre. Jasmine coming in saying, one more day till Friday. All right. Radical Education says, I wish Jaybe was my uncle. Thank you. I appreciate that. That means
I got a feeling you're a good uncle, Jaybe.
I try to be. I try to treat my nieces and nephews as if they're on my own. And what's funny about being an uncle? I actually love that they're adults now, because now we can have more deeper conversations and stuff. It's really cool. We can like get into like different like world events and stuff. I love it.
And they don't have to sit at the kids' table, right? They don't still have to sit at the kids' table, right? Yeah.
No, and I'm because
my grandma, oh my gosh, my grandma, I remember even when I was in college, my grandmother still had us all sit at the kids' table. I'm dead serious. I'm not kidding.
Let me ask you this. Was your grandmother the type where you weren't allowed to drink anything until you finished all your food?
Yeah. My parents were like that too, that you need to finish your food first and then you drink. Yeah, because their whole thing was, don't fill your stomach with, and this is when I used to drink soda. So they used to say, like, don't fill your stomach with the soda, fill your stomach with the food, and then you can have like a soda or whatever. But my parents were like that. We also couldn't have dessert unless we ate all our food.
See, that's interesting because I wasn't raised that way. That was new for when I came down here in the South. Up north, it was like, no, you had your drink with your food. We weren't taught that.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the way that they eat too. Like my parents don't really. I just realized like they have their drink after they finish their meal for the like if we go out to eat, they'll get a drink, like they'll get like tea or like iced tea or a soda or whatever, but they usually don't start drinking it until they finish their food. I noticed that. Yeah. But I mean, look, as an adult, I do things differently, but but yeah, my parents' big thing was finish all your food, you know. So
okay. Two more. Eric Gray says, I have some resources on mental health that I can recommend if anyone is interested. Put those in the comments, Eric. The resources are always good. And then Red Six says, do squats, they're better for you. Yeah, I'm trying to get the leg strength up really quick before I drop it like it's hot or put it down like it's warm, because you don't want to see Jaybe on the floor, because when JB's on the floor, then that means you're gonna have to help get me up. And
I do squats too, but I feel like leg press works a little bit of different muscles. Like I don't know, like it still works your quads, but I feel like different muscles are affected when I use leg press versus when I do squats. Squats are really easy for me. That's the other thing too. Like I like to try to do something a little bit challenging, but I do squats. But like I said, they're not challenging. Like they're and I use weights, like, and I use dumbbells when I do squats, but I do feel like they're not challenging for me. Lunges, however, like the split lunge with the weights, if you really want to get your heart rate going and you really want to work up a sweat, do that.
I'm just trying to do never mind, because that's too much TMI. But anyways, I want to do more stuff like lunges and stuff. I'll probably end up doing that probably next workout. But I'm just trying to focus on actually just toning and getting down. But it's a cycle, but we'll get it through. So, with that being said, what are we talking about today? Let's get into it, because I think this is going to be a deep, heavy subject, but at the same time, we don't want to give you something heavy without giving you a solution, right? Because the thing is that a lot of channels will talk about the news and they'll talk about, oh my God, this sucks. We're screwed. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so what do we do, right? Let me share the thumbnail that we're going to be talking about today. You guys probably saw it. It doesn't have to be like this.
Yep.
Who is this young man? And why are we talking about him? This is very important. And this is very close to my heart, because this has to deal with something that I dealt with at his age. Sabs, when you started middle school and high school, how was it for you? Was it kind of easy? Was it kind of so-so, or was there difficulty, especially socially, for you?
Socially is always going to be, I don't know, like, you know, because we moved around a lot. I was always a new kid at school. So socially, it was always the same thing every time. Like, this is the new kid and da-da-da-da. But I was always involved in activities. So that's usually how I made friends, through other like clubs and organizations at school. Also sports. I mean, I did track and field and stuff like that. So that wasn't really challenging because I was a part of organizations. But middle school for girls is incredibly difficult, because there's a lot of things going on. Not just, you're not a teenager yet, but you're also not a kid per se. Like you're in that adolescent phase. And so there's the whole starting middle school. That's when you start to ask, like, okay, can we start playing around with makeup? Can we, you start playing around with those types of things. And usually, like, a lot of parents are like, no, with the makeup stuff. You may start dating in middle school. There's a bunch of other things. And And, you know, you got some other things going on, like physically, you know, things are growing. I don't want to get too detailed, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Things are growing. And then there is the comparison with other girls where some girls mature faster than others. So there was like always that one girl in the group where she may not be as voluptuous as the other girls at her age. That's always an issue. Some people call it junior high school. I don't know how it is for everybody where you live, but it was middle school for me when I was growing up. There's that, and then there's also, you know, you got to deal with the womanhood time of the month thing. Like it's so much going on, the hormones and everything as a girl. Then by the time when you get to high school, then you have to deal with a lot of the cliques, right? So it's like you have the athletes and the cheerleaders and, you know, the what they call the nerds or whatever and all that kind of stuff. So then you got to deal with those social things as well, with all those other things that I just mentioned to you. So, and then that's also when more girls are likely to become sexually active. Some start earlier. When I was in school, there was a girl in one of my classes in middle school and she was pregnant. That was yeah. You don't hear as much about that now because teen pregnancy has decreased over the years. But when Jaybe and I were in high school, like that was teen pregnancy was an issue. So there's a bunch of different things that are going on. Also, when we were in school, what people may not have to deal with as much today, but the AIDS crisis, like that was another thing, you know, that people had to deal with, etc. But I think that as a girl, it was, oh my God, like I hated it. I loved the time I spent with my friends. I loved, you know, my classes, but high school was not something that I would want to relive again. Middle school was not something I would want to relive again, because it's true, as you start to get to that age and, you know, things do start to happen. And I remember girls got picked on because they had very little, you know, tiny boobs or hardly none. And that's another thing. If by a certain age, you're not developed as so like other girls, you'll get picked on, but you'll also get picked on if you develop too early. So it's all our stuff is on the outside. Like it's like you can't hide it. Like you can't hide boobs. You can't hide, it's just reality, right? So not something I would want to relive.
Understood. For me, I had 2 battles. I think by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I actually knew I was gay. So, and you can talk to pretty much anybody that's LGBTQ. It's like, ask them, when did they realize? Sometime between the ages, some of us will know as early as 5 or 6 years old. Like, you know, it's just crazy. And people be like, how can you know? It's like, how did you know you were straight? And then on top of it, being the chubby kid, I was bullied relentlessly in middle school, to the point where I considered self-harm multiple times. And on top of that, being raised heavily religious while also having to deal with my orientation, that was difficult. And then on top of it, living on the poverty level. So there's all these different variables that I had growing up, and then constantly being picked on in middle school and in my freshman and sophomore year in high school. That was extremely difficult. Plus, there was strife between me and my older brother, you know, because we were both dealing with different issues, you know, and then on top of that, my mom being a single mother at home, trying to, you know, raise her kids while working in a system where she's a Black woman and she does not make as much as she should as a worker. And then on top of that, you know, the exploitation that happens. And so when I saw this story, I felt what this young man was feeling, because I know what it feels like. And that's one of the reasons why, first of all, Sabby, I want to thank you for allowing me to be able to cover the story. But I also wanted to make sure that I speak about this from different fronts. From the bullying side, which, you know, we can talk about that. This is a social issue, but also from the economic side, right? Let me share a screen. Ooh.
Canva.
I did not mean to share that part. That's the nuts and bolts of the entire production, people. But this is out of California. It says a 14-year-old dies by self-harm. I got to be very careful with the words I use, but you guys see the word. After Santa Clara schoolmates bully him about being homeless. So let's get into this, because this is something I think we need to discuss. So they talk about the national hotline is 988, which is available 24/7. I want to make sure I read that because that's also very important. It says the South Bay father said his teenage son took his own life after being bullied by other students at a high school they attended because he was homeless. And now Jose Bautista wants to share his son's story to raise awareness about his 14-year-old son, Jose Zamora, who started school at Santa Clara High School just 3 months ago. And the reason why I asked about middle school and high school to you, Sabs, was because this is a kid that just got out of middle school and just started his freshman year. And within the first 3 months, he ended his own life. It continues, says, he was trying to make me happy. He was trying to be a better child. And boy, do I know that feeling. Jose died by self-harm last Tuesday. The grieving single dad said the teen was a victim of bullying at his high school where he was a freshman. The dad says, I miss hearing him, seeing him. I miss picking him up. Dad said he would pick up Jose from football practice at Santa Clara High School, where he was a member of the junior varsity team. Bautista said that after his son was found dead, he heard from other students that his son's teammates bullied him for being homeless and having no mother. First of all, I want to stop right there, because he didn't know that his son was being bullied. And this speaks to another issue around a lot of us men. We're taught to keep everything in on the inside and not say a damn thing. And then by the time people realize that we're suffering, it's too late.
Yeah, I would add girls usually say something. You know, I've got like Jaybe and I both got picked on like growing up. I mean, I was kind of, you know, nerdy. And I got picked on for being nerdy and all that kind of stuff. And also the other thing, too, is that, remember, I mentioned the thing about girls decide to start wearing makeup. My mom would not let me wear makeup. And that was another thing where people were like, you know, why don't you, you know, wear makeup, do your hair better or whatever. I also didn't have a perm, which I still don't have today. I didn't have a perm / relaxer. And for those who are not aware, like in the Black community, it's more like taboo now, where now it's more accepted to go natural. At that time, that was not the case. At that time, if you didn't have a relaxer, especially by high school, if you didn't have a relaxer or perm in your hair, yeah, like people would pick on you and just be like, you need to like, you know, why don't you have a perm? Like, why is your hair, you know, poofy? Like, why don't you do da-da-da? And I don't mean getting picked on by the white kids. I mean, getting picked on by the Black kids. Like you need to have, you know, your mom needs to give you a relaxer and da-da-da and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Which looking back on that is just ridiculous. And it's so funny because some of those same people now are preaching about why it's important to go natural, but they were picking on people who had natural hair. So there's that. But I think that, you know, girls are more likely to say something. I mean, when I was picked on in high school, you know, I told my mom. And my mom told my dad. And I think we can all figure what happened from there. But like, my dad went up to the school. But anyway, my dad went up to the school. I was never picked on after that. But anywho, true, boys are less likely to say something. But what's really interesting about this particular situation, he was a member of the football team. And the team, team is supposed to stay together. They're supposed to work together. So the football players on the team were picking on him. So it's not like it was people on the outside that were bullying him. His own teammates were bullying him. And at that point, I could imagine you think to yourself, like, well, who do I have to go to? Instead of picking on him, did any of them offer to help him? Did any of them offer, to help him or his dad or help them with their housing situation? Football teams raise money all the time. Did anybody on the football team say, let's get together and raise some money for our teammate?
And that, to add to your point, Sabs, says he heard from other students that his son's teammates bullied him for being homeless and having no mother. So not only was he suffering from homelessness, but his mom was gone. He had lost his mama. And so you got to think of, and look, a few people may drop off after I say this, but it is what it is. Male culture and patriarchy, I'm saying it, is suck it up, deal with it, and keep it inside. That's what we're taught, right? It was taught to us by our fathers. Hell, even sometimes our mamas and our grandmamas will even perpetuate that too. And then when it comes time for us to need to speak out so that we can get rid of or work through those emotions, we're told, oh, you're a pussy if you do so, or you're not man enough if you cry or put it out there. We're always told that. Right. And that's a part of and that's actually part of capitalist culture, because they want us to be robots so that we continue to allow ourselves to be exploited. And I talk about that in my reading for The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. The thing is, a lot of times that's one of the reasons. And so I think that's important that we talk about this and start realizing that that's a part of the system of exploitation that tells us to not explore our own emotions and allow us to be able to feel whenever we are feeling this way. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if you're dealing with stuff, I don't care who you are, I don't care what gender you are, it is important to talk it out and to deal with it so that you can be able to release, get that off your shoulders. Because if you stay with it, it's almost like a poison, a toxin that stays inside your body. And then it ends with somebody losing their life.
Yeah, I mean, but it's true. And I feel like it's old school thinking. I really do like this whole thing that men aren't supposed to cry. They aren't supposed to feel anything. It's actually not healthy to hold your emotions in. This doesn't mean go start yelling at people, but what it means is that it's good for you to release that, to let that out. It's not good for you to hold in, all of that like sadness or grief or anything like that, because it can actually affect your physical health too. If people are not aware, this is what I said too about stress. It's important that people learn how to practice stress relief. You can do that for free now on YouTube, because there's a number of like stress release videos and stuff like that. But when we were growing up, that wasn't the case. Like a lot of the things that you have now that you can just use freely was not that way for Jaybe and I when we were growing up during that time. If you wanted to deal with those types of things, it cost money. But now there are like, apps that you can use for like stress relief or whatever and stuff like that. But I think that it's wrong. I think it's wrong to tell males that they can't have feeling, that they can't have pain. Everybody has pain.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through something, at some point, whether it's grief or, maybe it's just or maybe depression, like whatever, like everybody has pain at some point in their life. And I don't think that that's something that you should hold in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's continue on, because I want to get back to this. Being homeless and having no mother. Here's what his father said. They were spitting on him, hitting him on the back of the helmet. Now, those hits may have not hurt physically that much, right? But emotionally, That hurts. Being spat on? It says Bautista said that the other football players also found out his son was living at Bill Wilson Center, a nonprofit shelter that helps unhoused and troubled youth. Bautista said his son was being treated there for mental health issues. Dad and son became homeless after they were evicted from their apartment earlier this year. So how many times you and I, Sabs, have shown the National Low Income Housing Coalition out of reach map where it showed that California was one of the most expensive states to live in. And you need to make, what is it, over $40 an hour?
And as we've said before, a lot of those people that are homeless were evicted. When people tell you all the homeless people are on drugs, that is not true.
No,
like
they're kids.
The homeless population has continued to increase, and that's under the Biden-Harris administration. People get evicted. A lot of people are one paycheck away from being homeless. So all it can take is for you to have one unexpected expense that you have to tend to for whatever reason. And next thing you know, you're behind on your rent. And when you're behind on your rent, it's hard to catch up.
Yes, it is. Because trust me, I know that for damn sure. And, let me continue on here. So it says, we were bonding more. He was waiting for a place to live instead of the shelter. That was his dad. He added that he had hoped to find a new home for him and his son in time for the holidays. Bautista questioned if the school district is holding those suspects of bullying his son accountable. School Superintendent Gary Waddell released a written statement which said in part, administrators have already taken initial actions in response. We in no way condone bullying, harassment, or retribution of any kind. Take any such allegations seriously. We strive to provide as many facts as possible to the community while preserving our duty to protect the privacy and confidentiality of both students and families. Bautista said he wants others to know what happened. He says it's kind of hard. I just don't want this to happen to other people like it happened to me. And now he started a fundraiser to pay for the burial of his son. So they're saying the police department are actively investigating his death. The thing is like, and a lot of people are talking about, well, we need to talk about bullying. And the thing is, like, bullying has been happening for time immemorial.
Right.
And the thing is, like, what do you do to mitigate the bullying? Well, of course, kids need to also be resilient, right? You don't want somebody to be overly sensitive because people have to work through that too, right? That could be a trauma response. But the issue is like, why are you allowing for the catalysts of bullying to continue? So he was bullied. Why? Because one, his mother died. How did his mother die? Was it something preventable? Was it something having to deal with the lack of medical care in this system? Because we can take that all the way back to capitalism. And somebody on Twitter was like, oh, you guys are politicizing this. I'm like, no, everything is political. Everything. I don't care what you talk about. Everything is political. Number one, how did his mother die? Was it something preventable? Could she have had the proper health care if we actually had a single payer or a nationalized healthcare system in place? Number one. Number two, the fact is that he was homeless. If we actually had a housing first model or housing for all, where people have guaranteed housing, would he have been picked on for that in the first place?
That's right. And I just have to say something about the spitting, because this is where I question the role of the coach. Where was the football coach when his players were spitting on another player? Like, spitting is one of the worst things that you can do to someone, to spit on someone, right? Like, that's disgusting. But where was the football coach when they were spitting on this kid? Where was he? I want to know. Because as someone who, listen, we worked with the football players when I was in high school. I was one of the trainers. For those who don't know, the trainers, we're the ones that are on the sidelines. We give them the Gatorade, the water, we wrap their ankles, that kind of stuff. So I did that my senior year when I was in high school. And I'm here the first to tell you, even during practice, the coach and the assistant coach are there. Most of the time they're not alone unless they're like in the locker room. But even in the locker room, a lot of times the coach is there. Even when I played sports, the coach was there. So where was the football coach when they were spitting on this kid? That's what I want to know. And if he was present, which most likely I assume he was, why didn't he stop what was happening?
That's a good question. I mean, you know, because it's just like the coach is essentially a teacher in the school. You know, why wasn't that, you know, around? And so one of the things that, you know, I constantly think about, people talk about, well, we should talk to our kids about bullying. It's like, yeah, you need to talk to your kids about that. But the problem is that some of the kids who are bullies, their parents are their bullies, and they take it out on other kids at home. And why are some of the parents bullies? Well, let's start to look at things from a 30,000-foot perspective. A lot of times parents are bullies because their parents were bullies, or sometimes they're going through hardship that causes them to behave in a way that is bullying to their child. So it's also carries over if you allow a system to degrade people in such a way where it affects them mentally. And so all these things are they're connected. And so for somebody like me, you know, my mom was a very, very caring and loving person. And I try not to tell her if anything was happening to me, because I know she'd go into mama bear mode and she'd be able to flip that school, you know, upside down, right? Don't mess with Mrs. Fauntleroy, right? But the problem is that as a male, I was taught, well, you don't want to be a crybaby, right? You want to keep that stuff on the inside. So until it got to be too much, then that's when I finally said something. See what I mean?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, by the way, don't mess with Black moms, okay? Because Black moms will come to the school and, like Jaybe said, will turn that school out. If there's one person that you do not want to piss off, it's a Black mom. Do not piss off Black moms.
Uh-huh. Let me tell you about my mama. And by the way, this is just a special note. My mother actually worked at my school. So you know,
just don't do it. Don't piss off Black moms, man, because they have no problem going to that school and making sure that their voice is heard. That is, you do not want to do that. And then also to your point about what's happening to the kids at home, the ones that are bullies. This is why sometimes teachers will ask if there are problems at home. And people make fun of that statement sometimes. The teacher's like, are there problems at home? But this is why they'll ask that question, because it's learned behavior. A child doesn't wake up one day and says, yeah, I'm just going to go beat people up. They learn it from somewhere. Yep.
So while that's being said, we see Professor Zenkus. Can you hear me? I don't know if he can hear us.
I think Professor Zenkus is in a garage.
I think he's going to the subway. Hang on. Hey, Professor, you're muted. Maybe he's probably just trying to we'll get back to him in a second when he gets settled.
Yeah, maybe he's trying
to yeah. He's on his way. But one of the things that I wanted to share was actually something that Professor Zenkus was speaking about. Oh, hang on. Can you? I can hear you.
I have no sound.
Oh.
I should try to sign in again. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in a parking garage, but I should be able to hear you, and I don't hear you, even when I wasn't in the room. So I'm going to try to sign in again. So I'm going to sign out and sign in.
Okay.
I thought he was in a parking garage. I'm like, I recognize those steps anywhere.
Oh. Okay, so with that being said, I actually want to share something that he sent me, which is also very important because I think this is important to the conversation as well. And this is Professor Zenkus when he had a TED Talk, and this is deeply informative. Let's check it out.
In 2008, the National Institutes of Health conducted a study where they compared the brains of rich kids with the brains of poor kids, and what they found was astounding. The brains of poor kids had been damaged to the extent that they resembled that of adult stroke victims. And the part of their brains that were impacted the most was the prefrontal cortex, and that's responsible for advanced thinking, judgment, and impulse control, and it's involved in the storage and the retrieval of memories. So,
impulse control. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
So, being raised in poverty also affects your brain and development.
Yep.
This is why we call it diseases of despair, because it's that deep. And also, hang on, let me put us in full screen here for this one. Imagine what it did to our ancestors who were enslaved. Oh, you guys didn't know we were going to go there. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're going to go there, too, because that's important.
Yep. I was going to mention something else, too, about the poverty issue. It's also not uncommon from, at least I can tell you here in Boston, it's not uncommon for people that grow up in poverty to have grown up in homes or apartment buildings that still contain or still have traces of lead. And what studies have shown too is that lead also affects your development and brain function. So I just wanted to make that clear to people too. Like a lot of people I know, you know, like my cousins, my parents that grew up in like the inner city in Baltimore, Maryland, you know, a lot of like those row houses that they grew up in still have lead, and lead can affect that. So just FYI.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. Let's continue on with this, and then we'll bring Professor Zenkus in. We're playing your video, Professor.
So science was showing us that the link between low socioeconomic status and poor academic achievement had absolutely nothing to do with a lack of motivation in these kids. It had to do with the fact that their brains have been profoundly impacted by poverty and inequality. We've been told for the longest time that societies based on competition, individualism, and inequality are the typical capitalist economies, that these are the best societies to get people to reach their fullest potential. In fact, the more competition and inequality a society has, we've been told that's what gives the incentive for people to bring themselves up from the bottom and pull themselves up by their bootstraps to make it to the middle class or beyond. But that's just not so. In fact, more equal societies do far better on a whole range of issues, including academic achievement, but they also have less violent crime, less family violence. And these societies, people have a longer life expectancy and they live healthier and happier lives.
So, with that being said, this is why we're bringing this into the conversation around poverty and mental health. And so I'm going to bring in Professor Zenkus right now.
No.
Professor, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. I had to download the StreamYard. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hey, I can hear both of you. Hi, Sabby. Hi, Jay. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to be seen. So what are we talking about, crew?
So we were just talking about the story about Jose Zamora, who was 14 years old in California, and he was being picked on because he was homeless. He had lost his mother, and so he decided to engage in self-harm, and he lost his life earlier this month. And we're tying the conversation of poverty with mental health. And, you know, it's something that I think is deeply important for people to realize is that, you know, when it comes to mental health, we talk about people needing to get counseling and, you know, go see a doctor, but we actually don't produce a system that actually enables that people to be able to do that, or allows for people to have a culture of where we, you know, depend on one another in order to have better mental health. So I wanted to also get your thoughts and initial comments about that.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. The society that we have constructed and that we continue to perpetuate, that hyper-individualism, hyper-competitiveness society, stratified by income, but also by race. So it's classist, it's racist, and it's completely unequal and imbalanced. That is not the type of society humans evolved to live in, right? And, you know, in my TED Talk, I talk about hard science and research. I found my car, by the way. I'm very happy. It's like being in limbo here, purgatory. But the stress associated with living on one of the lower rungs of the economic ladder in our society, that stress is toxic.
Yep.
And it's toxic to adults, and it's also toxic to children. With adults, people who live in the stress, I mean, think about this. Folks who were worried about the electricity being turned off, the heat being turned off, the water being turned off. A couple of years after Occupy Wall Street, which I was involved with, one of our organizers moved back home to Detroit, and there was a water strike there because they had shut off thousands of households for being more than 3 payments behind on their water bills, which means these people had no water to cook with, and they had no water to bathe with. They couldn't even flush their toilets, right? The stress, that's a daily stress that we take for granted that all these things are going to be available. Being afraid you're going to be evicted. We had a 12% spike in homelessness last year.
Yep.
And so whatever they say the homeless number is now, 600,000, that is a low-end snapshot. The numbers are much higher, and that's only on a given day. So even our own government estimates that over 4 million young adults and teens and children will be homeless at some point during the year. And what happens is that fear, not having a place to live, where am I going to go? Will I, you know, more than 1 in 4 Americans skips meals. They're food insecure. That causes stress. And our stress response systems are made to go up very quickly and come down very quickly. It's to get us away from a predator. That's how we evolved. That's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You see the gazelle running away from the lion that's trying to eat it. That's what our stress systems are evolved to do. They're not evolved to live with the daily terror that, and it is terror, that people who live in poverty in the United States deal with all across this nation, but especially in our cities, but also the rural areas. Now, to adults, that can increase the likelihood of things like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, because it's also type 2 is connected with stress, cancer, all sorts of cancers. Like the body goes into a protection mode, and it's only supposed to be there for a few minutes. And when it goes up and stays up for longer periods of time, there are these chemicals, the stress chemicals, and they're toxic to our entire, like all our organs and all our cells. They're not supposed to be there. For kids, it's even worse because kids' brains are developing, right?
Yeah.
So between the ages of 0 and 4, the brain is developing in these like insanely exponential ways, because that little child is trying to get as much information about the world as possible. And if the stress of poverty, of inequality happens then, those stress levels that go up for days, months, right, years, are literally toxic to the circuits developing in their brain. And that could be the circuits for communication, for language, for social connection, for memory. So these kids don't do well in school. So, but there's a whole other piece that we'll get into. I'll give you space. I just wanted to get into this, that just being on the bottom rung or the lower rung in an unequal society itself causes stress, because that layer you're talking about of that really horrific case of that young boy is, in addition to the struggles of daily life, you're ostracized for being poor, and it's not your fault. So, you know, every day they're living with this, and that's a recipe for illness and also mental illness. We can get into that in a bit too.
Yeah, one of the things that I also wanted to, and I think you and I talked about this last year when we were talking about what was going on in Gaza, is that I said it's almost like a physical form of NOS. You remember we talked about NOS, nitrous oxide, that's put inside the engine in order to supercharge it so they can go faster. But that's only meant a very short spurt that's needed to go. If you were to introduce NOS into a car engine block over and over and over, it deteriorates the engine over time because it's such a powerful chemical. It's the same thing what happens with cortisol levels. When your cortisol levels are heightened, it's great for short spurts in order to be able to get you out of danger. But when you're constantly in fight or flight mode, what ends up happening is you end up breaking down your body even faster, even sooner. And so what happens is, one of the things that you brought up was so interesting during the TED Talk was that one of the things that's affected is being able is judgment, right? So what if, my prefrontal cortex was not as developed as it should have been, a little bit more underdeveloped, and then I actually carried out what I wanted to carry out at that same age, right? And so it just goes to show that, a lot of times we don't take into account that, it's the system that's literally, ending our lives day in and day out. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, that kid should have just had better mental health professionals at school. It's like, no, that kid should have had a home. That kid should have had food. That kid should have had, his dad should have had a living wage, guaranteed work, but he didn't. And he should have never been evicted in the first place because he literally has a kid in school.
Well, there is good news, because I just, read that Joe Biden is giving billions of dollars to poor families. And, I'm sorry, I misread that. It's to Ukraine. So forget that. Forget it. We're not getting anything. Yeah, people should be housed. People should be... just like you look at Medicare for all. Okay, so we always look at the death toll. 68,000 Americans a year die because we don't have Medicare for all. What is not looked at is the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of more lives where they don't die, but their lives are shortened, they're stressed out, and their families are stressed out. If you have a parent that can't afford to go to the doctor and that parent is ill, now you've got a kid walking around wondering if their parent's going to die. Now you've got a family that's stressed. Now you have somebody who can't work up to their usual capacity. So their income is connected. So affected. So what ends up happening with poverty is it's not just the direct material needs not being met that causes the stress. It's all that other stuff. And it literally is a toxic soup. And the thing that gets me most is it's all on purpose. Like I really do. And now I get to the point where I believe Marx talked about the permanent underclass. This is a decision made by the ruling class, which is mostly white European descendant, patriarchal, like no matter who's in it identity-wise, that's the dominant culture. And that ruling class has made a decision. Jordan Sheridan talks about the geographical areas that have been abandoned as sacrifice zones. So like Flint, Michigan would figure into that, but now North Carolina too, because of the hurricane. But the entire country is a sacrifice zone. Right now, your life expectancy in the United States, the most determinative factor to how long you're going to live is what your zip code is.
Yeah.
And it's regardless of how, you could try and try. Black women in the middle class who, even if they get prenatal care, are more likely to have a low birth weight baby. Why? It's not genetic. It's because of the stress. So the stress of being on a lower rung, the stress of being othered, the stress of being a victim of racism or classism, all of those things contribute. And mostly they're not counted, right? And that's something we have to look at differently, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, another thing I was going to say too is I think that if you haven't been poor or you haven't had to struggle financially, it can be difficult for you to understand, what that kid went through, what Jaybe like is talking about, what Professor Zenkus is talking about. Like, I think what I've noticed with this country is that over the years, more and more people are living in poverty. And that number should decrease. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris told you that they cut child poverty in half and then the child tax credit ended early. And I didn't think it was a bragging point to say you cut child poverty in half. We can get rid of all child poverty in this country. We can eliminate all of it. So what they were admitting to you is that obviously poverty is a big issue in this country without saying that it was a big issue. That's what they were really admitting. And the fact that none of these politicians have really taken the time to address the poverty issue. It's the same issues that they discuss over and over. Immigration. And this is not to say that there are things with these issues that do need to be fixed. Like our immigration system does need to be fixed in this country. But they'll talk about crime, but they won't talk about poverty, which is connected. They'll talk about the housing. They'll say that, we need to create more housing, but they won't talk about poverty. And that is intentional. Like, how many times did you hear Kamala Harris say we need to focus on the middle class? What middle class? Why is it always about the middle class and not about the people who are poor? And because she's
afraid to. I'm sorry.
No, and it's true. And
because she's afraid to say the professional managerial class. That's who she's really talking to.
Yeah. And Professor Zenkus is correct about the zip code. And this is a reality. Like Marcel Dixon talked about this when he was running against Jim Clyburn. Jim Clyburn has one of the poorest districts in the country. But Jim Clyburn lives very well. Everybody mentions Flint, Michigan, but there's also Denmark, South Carolina that also has bad water. It's a problem that happens across the country. It all does depend on your zip code. And that also can imply, whether or not you are getting good food or bad food. We did a study a couple of years ago about food deserts right here in Massachusetts. That's right. Massachusetts is not just Boston. You can go a couple of towns south of Boston and there are food deserts, meaning they don't have a grocery store. People are buying groceries at Walgreens and Rite Aid and CVS. So most likely that's not healthy food. Where are you getting fresh fruits and vegetables? And by the way, fresh fruits and vegetables should not just be available for those that are higher income. Anybody should be able to go to a farmer's market and buy fresh food, but they can't because it's so expensive. You shouldn't have to, and I've said this over and over again, you shouldn't have to have a certain income to shop at Whole Foods. And I question if even some of the fruits and vegetables at Whole Foods is all organic, because I'm trying to figure out in my mind, how do you produce that much fruit and vegetables organically at such a rapid rate? So I have questions there as well. But Obviously, if you're living in poverty, you're going to buy the food that's cheap, whether you have food stamps or not. And oftentimes healthy food costs more than junk food, food that's not good for you. And that's not fair. So if you're not getting healthy food, if you don't have adequate health care, if you don't have clean water, your life expectancy is going to be shorter.
Mm-hmm. Another thing also is when you go to the food pantries, right? They'll give you a box of food, which, you know, we're grateful for. But at the same time, some of that food that they give you is processed. A lot of people don't talk about that. Or sometimes if you have a food, you know, restriction because of a certain condition, you know, you can't, beggars can't be choosers, right? So you can't choose, you know, well, I'm sorry, I can't have these things in these boxes or not. It's like whatever you get is whatever you get.
And
so, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Jaybe and I worked in restaurants, and I can tell you some of these restaurants don't have fresh food either.
Yeah.
No.
I worked in a restaurant too. I was a server. And yep, you know, folks who eat in restaurants, you don't want to know what goes on in the back. I'm just saying. Even in the nicer places, stuff is old, you know, they're hesitant to throw it away. But, you know, even in food pantries, one of the things people don't know if you've never been to one is not only are your choices limited by whatever they have, what if they have something that is healthy that you need and want? They'll limit you. Well, you can take one from this shelf, one from that shelf, and you're like, no, but I want 4 of these, 5 of these, because this is the food I need to eat. I can't have the pasta. And they're like, I'm sorry, you can only take one. So like, it's not that these places are bad, but you know, they have a scarce amount that they can give out. And the whole system is humiliating, insulting, and stressful. We don't make it easy. I've been dealing with some jokers online in the past couple of days, especially because I posted yesterday about Biden forgiving almost $5 billion in loans to Ukraine. And I'm like, you know, we got problems here at home. And they're like, oh, the American economy is doing so well. That's a liberal line, you know, because we're doing better than other countries. Yeah, those other countries also provide a wide safety net. They provide health care to everybody. So like you can't compare us with the rest of the world when it comes to that economy. And honestly, the second layer of that is, who's the economy helping? When you say the economy's good, you mean the stock market's okay today? Like that's half of Americans, their lives don't depend on the stock market. Their lives depend on whether they have enough money because to buy food for them and their families. And if you're a parent, you know, you're going to skip a meal so your kid can have 3. And it happens every day in this country. And it's that, you know, there was a book I read years ago, and I forget who the author was. It was called The Hidden Injuries of Class. And it's that daily humiliation of feeling like you don't matter and your voice doesn't matter. And now, you know, with everything, you know, on social media, especially, we're finding out, like yesterday, Biden's giving billions more to Ukraine, 20 billion more to Israel. People look and say, I really don't matter, do I? And you know, that does something to somebody. When you feel that, when you get the message, your life doesn't count, that there's a cellular response inside of us that things start to shut down. Your immune system starts to get weaker. You get sicker. And it's not just because you don't have enough food. It's the feeling of being poor in a society that has very rich people itself is toxic. So it's not just the poverty. It's the inequality. It's being poor in an unequal society, because it's really not how we evolved to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's against it.
Let me add this too. Even if you're doing okay, you now have to suffer with the feeling of your friends and family not doing okay, because now they're the ones who are telling you that they're not okay. So now you're stressing about them.
Another thing I was going to mention too, I remember when I was in high school, a friend of mine who I'm not going to name on here, but a good friend of mine had to get a job when we were in high school. Now, I worked in high school too, but that was by choice. She had to get a job to help take care of her family. because her mother could not work. Her mother had to stop working. So imagine having that type of stress where your after school job in high school is not because you want to be, a little bit more responsible and earn extra money on your own. It's because you have to help take care of your family and you have siblings. That happens to people in this country. I also want to mention the asthma rate. And this is something that I say, RFK, as kooky as he can be, he's right about the food. He's right about the fact that the food in this country is not healthy. If you go to other countries, this is why sometimes when American expats, when they move to other countries and they eat the food, this is why sometimes it can take their stomach a little bit of time to get adjusted to the food, because we add so much. Our food is so processed in this country and so many chemicals, etc. So he's right about the food, that the food that we're eating in this country is not healthy when you compare it to other countries. Another thing, though, is asthma. If you look at the asthma rates in the poor neighborhoods, particularly here in Boston, but around the country, people that live in the poor neighborhoods have higher rates of asthma.
Mm-hmm. Can I throw something in about that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I had read that stat too, Sabby, and so that's like in and of itself very concerning. And there are environmental reasons for that, right? So poor areas, rural and urban, are more likely to have like toxic waste and chemicals. Again, I encourage everyone to read Jordan Sheridan's or listen to the audiobook of We the Poisoned, because it's like amazing just to see the corruption. But there's another layer of this, and my work in trauma, there's research, and this is like well known in the trauma community, right? When you are stressed and those stress hormones, cortisol, goes up and stays up for long periods of time, it dysregulates the stress system, and that affects your entire body. That a lot of these kids have asthma because of stress. And if you look at the drug that they give to people, that like albuterol or one of those inhalers, that is a manufactured synthetic version of the stress hormone. And they give that because the stress hormones in the person's body have become so dysregulated that it affects their respiration, their ability to breathe and process oxygen, right? That's not just because of environmental problems, which do exist. It's also because of the stress of being poor in an unequal society. And if you throw racism on top of it, that's a double whammy.
Okay, so
I was just going to add this about the cortisol and pass it to you, Jaybe. Cortisol also can affect weight gain.
Yes.
So FYI, folks, cortisol, this is why they tell you that, if you're stressed out, you need to find a way to release your stress, because cortisol, it can cause, like, particularly, especially in women too, it can increase weight around your midsection. So this is why, like, stress is just toxic all around. Like, it's not to say we're never supposed to have any type of stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. But negative stress, apparently, again, you have to, it's not good. It's not healthy for your body. So just FYI, when people say sometimes they don't understand how they gained so much weight, a lot of times that's stress.
Yeah, actually, I think I was given a albuterol at the hospital because they needed to drop my potassium levels. But once after I took that treatment, my heart was like this. And I was nervous because of it. And I was just like, what the heck is going on? They were like, that's the albuterol. I'm like, what? So trust and believe, I know, But one of the things I wanted to bring up was I wanted to share this as well. This is from the National Institute of Health. And this talks about poverty and mental health, policy, practice, and research implications. And so it says doctors often play leading roles in social movements to improve public health. These range from early days of John Snow isolating the role of contaminated water supplies and spreading cholera, through advocating harm reduction, challenging HIV stigma, and more recently highlighting the public health catastrophe of mass incarceration in the USA, which also a lot of people don't talk about because a lot of us got family that's also locked up. Now we got to worry about that too. Because almost all examples are rooted in poverty. These are increasing recognition that the mental health problems from the greatest public health challenge of our time, and that the poor bear the greatest burden of mental illness. The poor bear the greatest burden of mental illness. And so even the United States government knows all of this. And yet they refuse to actually do anything about it. And I want to share this as well, because I think it's important that this comes from a scientist that talked about poverty and mental health as well. This is out of Columbia Psychiatry. You probably know this guy. Hey, so I'm not sure if you would know this guy, but
we just had lunch Tuesday. No, I don't know.
It's less than 5 minutes, so let's just.
I'm a research scientist at Columbia Psychiatry. My research focuses on how social economic factors such as poverty and financial hardship affect the mental health of communities. My goal is to help develop programs and identify the kinds of policies that can help tackle poverty and economic inequalities as they affect mental health. Different forms of financial hardship seem to affect mental health. One of the most important ones seems to be indebtedness. When people experience have too many debts, people have the experience the inability to repay their debts and feel that their level of debt is just too much for their income. What that seems to create is a sense of being trapped, sense of shame, feeling like one is a loser or a failure. And for many people, that brings about the thought that suicide is the only way out.
So first of all, I want to say this as somebody who has been in debt and has lived with the parent that has been in debt. I can't tell you how many check cashing places and payday lenders that we have in the hood. We have them a dime a dozen. And so imagine how many people are feeling that trapped, who are living in these poor neighborhoods. And so one of the things he actually talks about, I'm not going to play the entire thing due to the sake of time, but one of the things he says that is one of the solutions to him is making sure that we actually improve things like the minimum wage laws. And a lot of times people don't talk about minimum wage actually affecting your mental health. Like, who'd have thunk it? And so, I wanted to share just a little piece of that because it is important that we focus on, your livelihood deeply affects your mental health. Did either one of you wanted to comment on just the beginning of that really quick?
Yeah. I mean, when we look at what mental illness is and what mental wellness is, there's a lot in there, right? It's the things that are less easy to identify. Like I was saying, we understand why somebody would be stressed if they don't have enough food, but being in debt, right? How do you quantify that? And I could tell you for mental health, when they do intakes, you go to a mental health center to get counseling, they're not asking, are you in debt? They may ask your income level, but it's all of these other things that it's not one thing. It's the multiplicity of insults to, the essence of like what it means to be a person, to be, to feel sufficient and to feel valued. All of those things aren't measured in typical mental health and wellness. And then what happens is people's responses to being stressed because of debt, because of all these things we've been talking about, they're called maladaptive behaviors. So it could be addiction. It could be addiction to food, which, as Sabby pointed out with food deserts, it's really easy when you have processed carbs. You get that big bang of dopamine, right? You eat that. It's a cheap way to get calories, and you need calories to live. And all of a sudden, that becomes an addiction. Even violent behavior. All of these things get looked at by the mental health, or I would say mental illness industrial complex, and people get diagnosed and labeled and medicated or jailed or all of those. And the root causes are never looked at. So, you know, what I teach in my work, what I teach in my work is a liberation-based type of psychology, right? Which is the idea that we don't look at human behavior as just the end result and the behaviors which have caused a person to end up on probation or something like that. We look at like what these root causes are, and we try to do to understand through dialogue what has gone on in someone's life. And that, unfortunately, is not the presiding view in mental health and wellness and mental illness. The presiding view is this, like, individual must have a defect. And the more liberal version is like, oh, well, it's genetic, you know, there's nothing they can do. And I'm like, you know, genes don't even act the way people think they do. They respond to the environment. It's called epigenetics. It's well supported by science. We need to be treating more than just individuals. Because if we could let society off the hook, we could just be like, wow, there was something wrong with their genes and their brain. We're going to give them the right pill. I'm not anti-medicine. It can help people. But to think that is where we stop is the problem. And it makes a person feel powerless. Like, oh, I'm defective. My brain's, you know, organically altered in some terrible way. There's something wrong with me, as opposed to you're doing the best you can in a sick society, right? And I think that's a very different message that we need to be giving people who are suffering from this.
So one of the things I want to do is I want to talk about solutions, because I think that's one of the best parts that we can do, not only to help ourselves, but to help our community around us. And, you know, Professor Zenkus, you know, Sabby and I and Nick and Rome, we talk about mutual aid all the time, right? And so a lot of times people are like, what is mutual aid? So I want to start off there first, and then we can go into different types of mutual aid. But I think this is one of the best ways to actually help save lives. And that's what we're in the business of doing, is helping to save lives. So let me share my screen really quick, because I saw this video, and this is actually a great intro into what mutual aid is. It says it's mutual aid charity. Think about it.
About it like this. Charity is a rich guy giving a poor guy a fish. Mutual aid is sharing the fish we do have and discussing why the rich man has all the fish to begin with. Ever since I posted about mutual aid, I've been getting this question a lot, and we need to be very clear. Mutual aid is not charity. Charity, aid, relief, social services, these are terms that are usually about rich people or the government giving services to poor people. That is, rich and powerful people deciding who gets help, what the limits of that help are, and what strings are attached. Charity is never about getting to the root cause of someone's issue. In contrast, mutual aid is about connecting someone's immediate issues and needs to a broader systemic critique. It's about finding solidarity with other people with different needs and how their issues stem from the same system. And most importantly, it's about connecting that systemic critique to a broader political or social movement. To go a little deeper, charity is about adding requirements and stipulations, while mutual aid is universal. If you need it, you get it. Charity has eligibility requirements like sobriety, participation in job training, parenting courses, cooperating with the police, a lawful immigration status, or identifying the paternity of someone's kids. Charity makes rich people and corporations look generous while upholding and legitimizing these systems that concentrate wealth. The rich get to shelter their taxes while pretending to be good people. Think about it like...
So first of all, I would like to get your thoughts on that, and then we can go into the different forms of mutual aid.
My thoughts?
Me or Professor Zenkus? Oh, okay.
Sabby, did you want to go?
I was just going to say, like, for the longest time, I didn't realize the difference between the two. And it's true. Like, I've been involved in, charity work. And also, of course, like, we focus more on mutual aid nowadays. But charities are top down. So that's important for people to understand. Also, a lot of rich people will donate to a charity because they can also use that as a tax write-off. For those who aren't aware about that. So it's not like they're not getting anything out of it in the end. But you just have to be careful with charities. I even point out some of the ones like the Red Cross, for example, that has been known to collect money. And then afterwards, we're asking for the final product, like for Haiti, for example, when they collected all that money to help people in Haiti after the earthquake. And they only built 5 homes and they had millions of dollars. That's the thing about giving money to a charity is like there's too much overhead sometimes as well. And then those people are also getting paid. So it's just the way that I explain it to people is that when you donate money to a charity, just keep in mind that some of that money is going to go to overhead.
Yeah, that's important. And I would say the more local an agency or organization is, the better chance you have that it's not corrupt or has too much overhead. So like United Way was in trouble some years ago because their CEO makes hundreds of thousands, like 400,000 a year. But that's National United Way. The local United Ways, those chapters, I've worked with them, actually give a lot of good aid out to the community. But there's something else about you. So I've worked in the nonprofit sector my entire career. And now outside of it, looking in, I can say there was so much, you had to dance for your dollars. And it's, as the people working there, and, and I was in administration later on in my career, you had to kiss ass all the time to get donations. And there's something about mutual aid that's magical. And I'm going to use that word. It's healing for the recipient, but it's healing for the person giving the assistance too. And that, if you look at the way our government and our communities have been structured, it takes away our connection from each other. And what mutual aid does is it builds up that connection. I'm going to have to go in a minute or two. It builds up that connection, which is really important. We need to connect. Just throw this other thing out. Like that's how we lived as a species for 98% of our existence. As humans, was mutual aid. I've seen this meme going around. People are like, hey, if there were scientists working with chimpanzees and one chimpanzee was hogging all the bananas, the scientists would be studying what was wrong with that chimpanzee. And here we put them on the cover of Forbes, right? Like, that's not how we evolved. We evolved. Mutual aid is our natural state. It's not competitiveness. And every chance they get, those in power try to break our ties to each other. I am so excited when I see the mutual aid projects you folks do. And I am sorry, I do have something I need to tend to. So I have to zip off, if that's okay.
No, that's perfectly fine. We appreciate you, lending your expertise and your knowledge to this subject, because I think it's really important. So thank you so very much. And if you have anything new coming up, just let us know what you have coming up as well.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out, like, everybody, this is the stuff they're not, what Revolutionary Blackout Network and some other folks are doing. These are the things they're not talking about in mainstream media, and they're not talking about it on the bougie left media either, right? Like Hassan's not talking about this stuff, and you guys are. And so I'm very grateful, not only for the opportunity to be on, but for the fact that, you're always out there keeping it real. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor.
All right. Love you guys. See you soon.
Love
Bye-bye.
you. Take it. Bye-bye. All right. So I want to share this as well. And then we'll get into what you have coming up soon, Sabs. But this gentleman also talks about different types of mutual aid that I think is deeply important for us to consider. I shared this on my channel, but I want to share this here as well.
Aid. Everybody's talking about it, but what is it? I'm going to give you a quick overview on the different types of mutual aid groups that exist and what might apply to you as an individual. There is food distribution mutual aid. These are community kitchens and free meal programs. It could be grocery deliveries to the elderly or to disabled folks, or food sharing programs like community fridges. There is housing and shelter mutual aid. This can be offering shelter or housing assistance to displaced individuals. It can be crowdsourcing funds for rent and utilities, or it could be something like organizing housing cooperatives or shared spaces. There's healthcare mutual aid. This could be distributing first aid supplies, medications, or other health-related resources. It could be offering free clinics or medical advice from volunteers like nurses or doctors, or mental health support, including therapy sessions or community-led wellness initiatives.
So these are just some of them that you can do. I bring this up because a lot of people go, well, what can we do? And I'm like, there it is. Ta-da! You know, because the thing is, like, everybody's like, well, I don't know what I can do. And there's many things you can do. All you need is a group of friends, baby. Just get a group of friends together. You know, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have. You know.
Yeah, no, this is 100% like, I mean, yeah, I think sometimes, and JB, you and I have seen this over and over again, that a lot of times people just look for politicians to be the solution. And if that is what you're looking towards as your solution, you're going to be just constantly disappointed over and over and over again. At one point, JB and I used to look to politicians as, yeah, they're going to be the ones to help us, but they're not. So I think that this is why organizing is important. This is why, like, we do push like mutual aid, and maybe at one point we can have host a webinar to teach people how to do it. It takes time. It takes patience, and I think that, you know, but it's something that needs to get out there, and it's hilarious to me that a number of people don't talk about this at all.
Yep, absolutely. Let's continue.
Childcare and education mutual aid. This could be community-led childcare or babysitting cooperatives, organizing educational workshops, tutoring sessions, or skill sharing. It could even be creating free school supply drives or communal homeschooling programs. Then there's financial aid and fundraising mutual aid. This is like crowdfunding for medical bills, rent, utilities, things like that. It could be about establishing community funds for like relief needs, or even small interest-free loans or grants for community members in need. There's also legal support and advocacy mutual aid. This could be offering free pro bono legal representation, assisting with bail funds for individuals in the criminal justice system, or even providing know your rights workshops for information on navigating the legal system. There's transportation mutual aid. This could be coordinating ride shares for people trying to get to work. This could be organizing bike donation programs or even repair services, or providing funds for public transit passes or car repairs. There is technology and digital support mutual.
So you guys get the point, basically. There's many different forms of mutual aid that can be done. And the thing is like with just like what the young man, you know, Jose Zamora, what, you know, when he took his own life over, you know, mutual aid could have saved his life. But instead, the system, you know, could we help prevent that from keep happening? Right. So I just wanted to share that. I shared the link to you guys so you guys can finish it. But I do know that you also, speaking of mutual aid, Sabs, you actually have something coming up soon that is dealing with mutual aid for the holidays. And so can you also talk about that so that people can be inspired to do what you're doing?
Yeah, this is a big event. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, it's not just me. There's a group of us at the Boston chapter that do mutual aid here. So I just want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. It's not just Sabby doing this, just FYI. But this December, guys, we do have the Winter Wonderland gift donation event that is coming up here in Boston. This is going to be, again, it's going to be hosted at the Bruce C. Bowling Building. That's 2300 Washington Street, Roxbury. And it'll be December 15th at 12 p.m. And what we are doing is we are donating gifts to 50 kids. Now, the way that this works is this is not a just show up event. Like, we have contacted Orchard Park School here in Roxbury, and they are sending this out to the families that are in need. So we will already have, it's invite only RSVP, but we are doing that for several reasons. Number one, we need to know like how many kids. So we knew we could do at least 50 kids here. Also, we needed to know the ages and the gender of the children, so we know what types of gifts to get for them. And then we're also going to have a catered lunch that same day for their family. So you're not just coming to show up to grab your gift and go home, right? So this is a part of community building. So I'm very excited about this one, the Winter Wonderland gift donation, and hopefully this can become a regular thing that we do. So that'll be Sunday. Our goal is 3,000. So I'll put the link here in the chat for the fundraiser. It's on Spot Fund. And I'm going to be talking about this tonight on my show as well. So I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah, I am so proud of you, Sabs. This is awesome. I cannot wait to see, the results of this when you show it. Also, you're having your show tonight. What's going on tonight on your show as well?
Yeah, so tonight is going to be a very busy show. So get ready for that. I have a guest coming on at 8 o'clock. She is going to be, she's speaking for the Anthony Harden family. So she is representing them. She's going to be talking about his murder case. So she's going to be coming on for a bit. Scott Ritter is going to join me also tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get into the recent statement from Vladimir Putin about the West. Also, we're going to discuss Netanyahu's arrest warrant. So, and then I have other news stories as well. I'm not going to go live on Friday. So you guys, after tonight, you won't see me live again until next Tuesday evening. I'm taking a couple days off. So tonight's show will be very busy. So just stay tuned for that.
All right, Sabs. And I know that you typically have a hard out at 6:30. And so thank you so very much for being patient with me through this entire segment. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I did the best I could in disseminating this information. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Jaybe.
All right. Take care, Sabs. All right. All right. So just to let you guys know, I also do mutual aid down here on the ground in Orlando. And those of us at RBN Orlando are trying to also raise money for our mutual aid as well. If you guys would like to, we also have, you can donate via Cash App at Orlando, $Orlando RBN. We do this so that we can do more for our community. We're going to try to do something for the month of December so that we can actually do something for the community. I was unable to do it during the last couple months because I was working essentially for a campaign. But now that that's over, we can actually start donating and doing more for the community unhoused, especially here in Orlando. So if you guys would like to, you guys can donate there. So thank you so very much for that. So with that being said, one of the things that I want to do is I want to go to the chat. And then we will cover some of what you guys have been saying as well. And then we'll head on out for that. So just want to give a big shout out to thank you to Professor Zenkus for coming on such short notice, because I think this is where it was an important discussion to have, especially in regards to poverty and mental health and why we need to do what we do to change the system. Because if we start to change the system on a fundamental level, we'll literally be saving lives. That's the point. And if you are dealing with any type of depression or any type of anxiety, or if you're considering self-harm, please get help as much as you can. I know that's kind of cliche to say because of the system that we're in, but even if you need to go to a hospital, or a clinic in order to at least get something. Try to do what you can to do what you can to get something, okay? Because we're glad that you're still with us. And we want you to be with us. Okay? Now, let's get into, let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants. And then we'll check on the rock bin, because I want to make sure that I don't miss anybody. I want people to know that they matter, right? Okay, so we're good on the Rumble side. No Rumble rants yet. All right, so let me check on the rock. And I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I think this is something that a lot of people, you know, just don't talk about, you know, but as somebody that has, I know what it's like to be homeless as a child, right? I know what that's like. And then people talk about homelessness as, oh, people just out in the street, but you don't talk about the people who are doubling up in households, right? People sleeping on couches and whatnot. People don't talk about the people who are sleeping in motels. You know, families have to live in the motels, right? People don't talk about that either. And then some people who may be in shelters, technically they are still homeless. So a lot of times people don't talk about them, and they don't talk about the issues that they have to deal with. They don't talk about the issues where, you know, somebody may be having to go through foreclosure, or somebody may be having to go through the eviction process. So all these variables come up. So let me share my screen here. Let's go into this. Roger Meadows, thank you so very much, says the practice of dozens of snapping and cracking runs hard in our community. The only way you can get people off your back is through snapping back. I got picked on in junior high school, which I hated, but not high school. In the Black community, there was no room for softness. No one is coming to your rescue unless you have older sibling in school with you. Yes, Sab, Black Mom says, JB, what episode you're up to so you can help me push Sab to listen to it as well. I understand she don't like him, but she will never regret peeping it. You know, I never disappoint. Yeah, as far as the episode, I still haven't gotten to episode 6 yet. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'll let you know when I finish it up. Thank you very much. And as far as, you know, the snapping, cracking, you know, you know, you know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, you gotta, you know, toughen up. And it's like, yeah, but at what cost, right? It's like, you can only, you know, you can only do so much. And it's one thing if you're all doing okay socially and economically, but if you're suffering and then you're getting picked on because of it, it's like, yeah, I mean, people, it could build character, but at the same time, what happens to the ones who it builds character to the ones that end up ending on their own life? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, what? It's like, is it just a survival of the fittest? Well, that person was too weak anyway. You know, to me, we can do better than that. I just think we can. You know, and I know that's part of Black culture, but what part of that Black culture does that come from? You know, because there's certain things that we normalize within the Black community, but actually it comes from someplace nefarious that was done to us, you know, and maybe we did it as a point of survival, but these are different times now, and we should be, you know, adapting away from the system that wants us to behave in a certain way that is damaging to us on a physical and mentally healthy way. You know, maybe I'm just talking out my ass. I mean, I don't know. You know, I just feel like we deserve better. I don't know. But thank you very much for that. Let's get into the rest of the chat. Sorry to give a shout out to the new channel members. Thank you very much for that. Eric Gray says, reading recommendation, racial trauma, clinical strategies and techniques for healing invisible wounds by Dr. Kenneth V. Hardy. Thank you very much for that, Eric Gray. So if you guys, would like to write that down or take a screenshot so you guys can have that book recommendation there. We have Marcus, Casper Zizek says the negation of liberalism is coming. It is up to us to decide the negation of the negation is communism or intelligent cockroaches. Well, let's get out the raid, shall we? Thank you, Janice Anderson. Census uses 1963 proof prices to set poverty line. It needs to be updated to today's prices and include housing, healthcare, utilities, and transportation. I fully agree. The thing is like, why are we still using 1963 prices? Because if we were to change the prices to 2024 prices, then guess what? Most of y'all would be in poverty. All of us would probably be considered to be in poverty. People who are making $60,000, $70,000 would be considered poverty line. But they don't want that, because then that means that they would need to raise the wages. That means that they would need to have more of a shift within the country as far as wealth inequality is concerned. Eric Gray says, another reading recommendation, Class Struggle and Mental Health. It can be found online in the Anarchist Library. Thank you very much for that as well, Eric Gray. Coming in with the reading recommendations. I love to see it. Let me do a couple here while we're at it, because I want to make sure I get to people. Let me PXLCO says whole frozen chicken farm raised at market near me is $30. That is crazy. Wow, that's horrible. Like, it's just way too much. It's unsustainable. And yes, Kurt says cheap food is also bad for the brain. Yeah, you get that brain fog and stuff like that. And then what Sabby said about the cortisol levels, a lot of people who live in the hood, you'll look at people and you'll see like, a lot of people who are overweight, and it's not because, part of it is because the unhealthy diet, because we live in food deserts, but also part of it is because of the cortisol, because we're all so stressed. So yeah, you'll see, some big men's and big women's in the hood. And is it always because they just don't take care of themselves? Well, no, it's because of the stress levels that we also have in these places. And also the PTSD that goes on too. There's a lot of PTSD that a lot of people don't talk about. Corporal Commander says, I was a missionary as a kid. I go to other countries and built churches and feed folks. Funny how all this stuff has to be donated. Walmart can easily afford to have free soup kitchens. Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Casey says that we are literally social security numbers, and that's how we're known. Unfortunately, yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. I wish you weren't, but you are. Mouse says, I can relate. I'm stable, but it's in a hole. It's proving very hard to climb out of, just rolling with it. Yeah. Once you get into that hole, can't come out of it. You see. Let me just trying to make sure I get to people who I haven't gotten to. Jay says, my parents jumped from credit card to credit card chasing the 0% APR till the day cancer killed my father. Only his life insurance got my mom out of debt. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, Jace. And Just Pyrite says, this is really stressing me out. Then I think about how stressed out other people are, and that stresses me more. Endless cycle. Do we have solutions? And yeah, I hope that the talking about mutual aid was a help, because, you know, we save us. That's the only way we can actually help ourselves, that we have to be part of the solution that helps saves us. And this is why, you know, me, Nick, Rome, Sabby, we try to do mutual aid in our respective cities, and we're encouraging others to do the same. Do something. You don't have to, look, you don't have to move mountains, right? If there's a mountain of pebbles, you don't have to move the entire mountain. You grab one pebble and you get friends to help you grab other pebbles, and then invite other friends to grab other pebbles. By the time you grab 1,000 people, 1,000 pebbles are moved. That's all it takes. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. The thing is that you take the first step. And we live in a society, I'm not trying to go on a rant, but we live in a society where people don't do anything until the first person does it. And then once one person does it, then everybody gets the strength to be able to do it. So then it goes like this. For instance, if somebody's asking for money, right? They get on the bus and they ask for money, right? Let one person pull out $1. One person. And they have to give that $1 to that one person. Then the people who actually have it, they start checking their wallets real discreetly to see if they have it. And if they do, they're like, hey, here. Because all it takes is that one. Because technically, let's be real, we have a follower species. Sometimes it takes just a teeny bit of courage to be the leader. And all you got to do is plant the seed, and everybody else will come in and water and fertilize and prune. Next thing you know, you're like, whoa. And then people start helping out. But all it takes is for you to put that little bit of courage in there just for a second. Right? And then, boom, things start to grow. I almost did not do the Orlando Mutual Aid until it was really Rome that pushed me. Thank you, Rome. And I did it. And now, not only are we doing mutual aid, but I got new friends and comrades in this fight. Shout out to you guys. I love you. See you this weekend. But that's the point, right? And then we get to help people. And then we get to help try to heal our communities from the system that's actually hurting them. So this is why I say to you, just pray. I get it. I feel what you're feeling. And that is a legitimate feeling to have, because you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you're sick and tired of seeing others sick and tired, which means that you have empathy. But put the empathy to action. Put the empathy to work so that we can encourage more and change the system from the ground up. Mutual aid, baby, is a beautiful thing. And I hope this gave you some hope as well. Just pray. Welcome to the channel. I haven't seen you before, but welcome. Okay. So with that being said, I just want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, because you guys make this possible. You guys give us the ability to be able to do mutual aid on the ground. You guys literally keep the lights on. So while we're also reporting on the news, we're also encouraging people to be activated, and we're doing the work on the ground in order to help people. And this means the most to us, because this means that you guys not only want to listen to our voices, but you also want to assist us with not just amplifying the voices of others, especially those who are marginalized, but you want to help us to help the people who are on the ground as well. And so you know, this is what community is all about. And you guys make this possible. And without you guys, you know, where will we be? And so, you know, there's beauty in community. And so we just want to thank you guys from the top and bottom of our hearts for all that you do, you know, and also for your kind words and your compassion when it comes to being with us within this community. So thank you very much. So with that being said, we're going to head on out because I rambled on long enough. But hey, please continue to have your thoughts with the father of Jose Zamora. And do what you can to not just be kind to yourself, but also be kind to others, even if it is a kind word, or if you see somebody not feeling so hot, like mentally, just at least give them a smile, or at least say something. It may sound cliche, but it may end up saving their life. You matter, right? Or bring them something. You know, if, you know, you see that they're struggling with something, help them out. You don't need to have a lot in order to help. You just need the compassion. Everybody, I'll see you when I see you. Check you guys out this Sunday. So, and also thank you guys again. And also don't forget to donate to Sabby's as well. Her mutual aid, she's kind of coming up. So thank you very much. All right. Water your plants like I did today. Water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. And please make sure to take care of your community and yourself. Mwah, forehead kisses. I'll see y'all in the next one.